Great to see you.
Oh, it's great to see you, and thank you so much for being interviewed for Leading Ladies TV. I'm really excited about this because I know lots about you in terms of the successful business that you run and sporting achievements, 5 marathons, my God. But the story that I don't know so much about is the claim to fame that you have of being mum to 84 children. So I'm excited to hear about this. So to introduce Amy to the Leading Ladies viewers, this is Amy Machacek. I only know you as Amy. I'm terrible with that last name. I'm so sorry. So Amy, yes, share with us your story about mum to 84 children.
Sure. So I have 4 biological children who range in age from 15 to 22 years old. And I had the distinct privilege of also being a mom to 84 foster children over the course of 11 years. And initially I got into foster care really just as a way to help out a friend of mine. She and her husband were foster parents to some teenage boys. And my friends were looking to get away for the weekend and needed somebody to watch their children. And so I thought, well, I can do that. I like kids. And at the time, mine were really little. And so I started to watch them on weekends. And after a couple of times, my friend said, would you mind getting licensed by our state so that, the state knows where my kids are going when I'm gone? And I was like, sure, and I'll do this just to help out my friend, every now and then. And so I went through the program to get licensed and got my license on a Thursday. And the next day, the police department called me and said, hey, could you take a little girl that we had to remove from a home, and could you take her for the weekend? And I was like, sure, why not? This is not my plan with foster parenting, but sure, why not? And that little girl came for the weekend and stayed 3.5 years. And so I always say, I wish all weekends were 3.5 years long. That's would that be? But she came in on that Friday, and then not long after that, our house ended up housing 7 children. So always my children were in on that. So 3 kids at a time, and then 4 of mine once I had my last child. And so we always had 3 or 4 foster children living with us at the same time. And so now I always brag that even though my kids are old, that there was a long time where I had 5 children in diapers, and I could change a diaper like nobody else.
Oh my God, that's amazing. How old were you when that sort of started?
So I was probably 25 years old when I got into 25 or 26 years old when I first started being a foster mom. And ended when I was about 37 years old.
Wow, that is incredible. That is absolutely incredible. I'm sure it must have been really rewarding. What was the experience of doing it? How did it kind of challenge you and reward you?
Well, so this is what I always kind of think back about is that I had these children of my own, and I was raising them, and you want your own children to understand consequences in life, and you want them to understand how to be grateful, and you have all these things that you want for your own kids. And for me, having these foster children in my house, some of these kids came from just really tough situations, like the parents were not in a good place and therefore couldn't take care of their children for that time. And then others were teenage children who were just really making a string of bad choices and therefore ended up in foster care. So I always said to my friends that I felt like my own children were really learning a lot about what to do, good decisions that my foster kids had made, and then in some cases about what not to do. These teenagers sometimes that ended up in care, like I said, were just making one tough, bad decision after the other. And in the end, they ended up in, a home that was not their own to begin with. And even though I would say that my foster children really felt like our home was their home, I mean, we took them on every vacation that we went on, and if we would go to a cabin or a cottage for the weekend, we would take them with. And so they really learned, I think, what it felt like to be part of a real family. Many of my foster kids, when they moved into my home, had never sat down at a kitchen table to eat dinner, for instance. And so they learned these things. And I always feel like, even though these kids might have stayed with me as short as 2 weeks or as long as 4 years, they had some time where maybe they learned some things that they might tap back into when they become adults. And so that was sort of part of what kept it going. That, and then just not wanting to say no. So in the Midwest, in the United States, children come into foster care, and then the parent, if the parent, would like to do the work to get them back, they have to go through classes or, trainings and things like that to get them back. And so even though a lot of times these kids were with us for just a finite amount of time, I always felt like they learned something that, when they get to be adults, maybe they'll remember what it meant to sit down and have a family meal, or to talk things out rather than to fight things out, because a lot of them came from really tough homes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so my own children really, I would say they benefited a lot from, from seeing just the wonderfulness of these children that came and lived with us, and then also seeing the challenges that those kids had.
Because there must have been challenges, difficult situations when children are used to kind of fighting their way out as opposed to talking it out. How did you manage it?
I would say that we had a lot of training, first of all, becoming foster parents. I mean, they give you a lot of training on how best can you work with kids that are, making bad decisions, and how best can you work with kids in this environment. So that really helped to just kind of learn how to stay steady with them, because a lot of them were used to having the parent kind of flip out or so we were really steady. We were really good at follow through. If we said, hey, if you get in a fight at school, you won't be able to go someplace for 2 days, and we follow through with that. I think that was helpful. But mostly I think just to be consistent. It surprised me at how quickly kids would change, and they would come in and their chart would say they don't eat anything. They eat candy, And I would just serve them the meal that I was serving everybody else. And within 2 or 3 days, they were eating the normal food that everybody else was feeding them. And sometimes I think it's maybe easier to be a foster mom because it sometimes feels like you are a half a step back. Like, I always said that it felt like I was parenting my sister's kids or my brother's kids. So you still felt like they were related to you, but it was that half a step away, which maybe makes it a little easier to say, listen, you're okay. You can make better decisions. You can get along in school. At one point, we took in a 14-year-old mom. So this 14-year-old came in with a 1-year-old baby. And I was, thinking, this is going to be great. I have 3 daughters who are ages 8, 9, and 11. Like, they are going to realize how hard it would be to be a teenage mom. And after about 6 months of this girl and this baby living with us, I said to my 3 daughters who I was home with alone one day, I said, girls, do you see how hard it would be to be a teenage mom? And my 11-year-old said, yes, I never will be a teenage mom. And my 9-year-old said, me either. I will not be a teenage mom. And my 8-year-old said, I can't wait to be a teenage mom. So sometimes it backfired on me. She's not a mother yet, and she's almost, through her teens. But it was funny. So, there was a lot of laughter and a lot of really good things. And not a lot of people have 7 children in their home. And the thing I loved about it is it felt like a really big family, and you can do a lot. You can have your own parties if you have 7 kids in your house, and you don't have to invite other people over to have those parties. So I think what I learned mostly, though, as a parent, because I parented all these kids, I learned that what my kids needed was actually less of me hovering over the top of them, than I probably would have done. Like, there was a book a few years ago, something about being a slacker mom. And at first I was like, well, that's so offensive. Like, nobody wants to be a slacker. Like, that's not a good thing. But actually now I say that I'm a slacker mom. And the reason I say that is because I don't want to hover over the top of my kids and try to make every decision for them. But rather, I would like to, start to inch my way back when they're really kind of young, like 10 years old. I want them to start to make some little decisions so that when they're 12, they can make bigger decisions. And when they're 15, the decisions get bigger. So that when they leave my house and go to college, they are ready to make these good decisions. And I don't think we can go from, keeping them in this big, tight grip, which is the way a lot of us are parenting nowadays, and then try to go like, okay, you're going to college, goodbye. The kids aren't prepared that way. And I think if I learned one thing, it's to slowly let them make more and more decisions as they get older so that they are ready to go. I say that a lot. Like, my job as a mom is to love my kids and prepare them to go. And I think that has worked really well.
It's amazing. Some of the children that arrived with you, you say they were teenagers, were they still children, or because of the sort of hardships that they'd suffered, were they more like sort of adults and thinking they could make their own decisions and things?
That's a really good question. What I noticed the most was they might have come in with a really hard shell on them. A lot of these kids started having to make very adult decisions at a very young age. But really underneath it all, they were these super soft, really tender-hearted people. And what I needed to do to get to that place was to really drop the judgments. A lot of these kids have a lot of judgments on them. They're judged as a bully or they're judged as a troublemaker. And I just let that all go away. And when they would move into my house, I would just say, hey, here you have a fresh start. And when you allow that, or when I allowed that, then they really were able to just be who they were, and they would show this sweetness that they had. And even kids who had been, arrested for shoplifting and ran away from home and all these things, when you just really let all those labels that they'd walked around with already for 15 years, let them go, it's funny how you find this softness in them.
I don't want this interview to turn into promotion for people fostering, but I'm feeling myself like, gosh, wow, what a wonderful experience that must be. What reward did you get? How did it?
I will tell you, it felt really good. The county, so these kids came in through the county was working really hard to work with the parents and try to get the parents to be a part of, a more productive part of this child's life. And then my job, or our job, was to work with the kids and let these kids know that you don't have to be a bully, like I was just talking about, or you can be a really kind-hearted participant in a family. And so I always had all the kids helping with dinner, or they would help pack each other's lunches for school. They would help. We'd play big family games, but we'd also make sure everybody did their job in cleaning. So I think my job was to teach them how to be a part of the family. And in doing so, they would have more likelihood to go back to home and be a part of a family once they got there.
Amy, I just want to carry on interviewing you because in terms of inspiring stories and inspiring women, you've blown me away. I'm captivated. Sadly, we try to keep the interviews on the Leading Ladies TV to 10 minutes. I've already not even tried to stop this because I'm so intrigued. So I'd like you to come back, if you would, and talk to us about how you also created a fabulous business during that time. Thank you so much. I really feel there's going to be a connection for many women watching this evening, and I think you'll make a difference with this story. You've blown me away, and I'm not a parent. I'm now wondering whether I could be brave enough to foster. What would be your advice for me if I was thinking about that?
You know what? I mean, every country, I'm sure, is different. But I think the best way, what I always tell people is a lot of people who are already foster parents need a break every now and then. And so one of the best ways, I think, in the United States, we call it providing respite care. So that was my intention to begin with, was to just provide respite care to another foster family so that their children would come with me on the weekend. And that kind of gets your feet wet. And then you kind of go, oh, yeah, I see what it feels like to have somebody live in my house just for a few days at a time. And then you can decide if that feels right. Because, it's kind of like having guests that stay a long time. And while that's really fun, that can also, for some people, really not feel great. So I always say, tap your toe in the water and just start to see how it feels. And then if that feels good, take the next step. And if that feels good, take the next step. So I think that works for a lot of people that way.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. That has just been absolutely wonderful. I've loved that. And you will come back and tell us some more of your inspiring stories about not just being super mum, but a super business lady too.
I would love to. Thank you for this opportunity.
Okay. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.